When the gold rush began, the California goldfields were peculiarly lawless places. When gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill, California was still technically part of Mexico, under American military occupation as the result of the Mexican-American War. With the signing of the treaty ending the war on February 2nd, 1848, California became a possession of the United States, but it was not a formal territory and did not become a state until September 9th, 1850. California existed in the unusual condition of a region under military control. There was no civil legislature, executive, or judicial body for the entire region. Local residents operated under a confusing and changing mixture of Mexican rules, American principles, and personal dictates. Law enforcement of federal laws, such as the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, encouraged the arrival of free blacks and escaped slaves. While the treaty ending the Mexican-American War obliged the United States to honor Mexican land grants, almost all of the goldfields were outside those grants. Instead, the goldfields were primarily on public land, meaning land formerly owned by the United States government. In all modern states, a portion of land is held by central or local governments. This is called public land, state land, or crown land. The system of tenure of public land and the terminology used varies between countries. However, back then, there were no legal rules yet in place and no practical enforcement mechanisms. The benefit to the 49ers was that the gold was simply free for the taking at first. In the goldfields at the beginning, there was no private property, no licensing fees, and no taxes. The miners informally adapted Mexican mining law that had existed in California. For example, the rules attempted to balance the rights of early arrivals at a site with later arrivals. A claim on the land could be staked by a prospector, but that claim was valid only as long as it was being actively worked. Miners worked at a claim only long enough to determine its potential. If a claim was deemed as low a value as most were, miners would abandon the site in search of a better one. In the case where a claim was abandoned or not worked upon, other miners would claim jump the land. Claim jumping meant that a miner began work on a previously claimed site. Disputes were often handled personally and violently, and were sometimes addressed by groups of prospectors acting as arbitrators. This often led to heightened ethnic tensions. In some areas, the influx of many prospectors could lead to a reduction of the existing claim size by simple pressure. Development of gold recovery techniques. Approximately 400 million years ago, California lay at the bottom of a large sea. Underwater volcanoes deposited lava and minerals, including gold, onto the seafloor. By tectonic forces, these minerals and rocks came to the surface of the Sierra Nevada and eroded. Water carried the exposed gold downstream and deposited it in quiet gravel beds along the sides of old rivers and streams. The 49ers first focused their efforts on these deposits of gold. Because the gold in California gravel beds was so richly concentrated, early 49ers were able to retrieve loose gold flakes and nuggets with their hands, or simply pan for gold in rivers and streams. Gold panning, or simply panning, is a form of placer mining and traditional mining that extracts gold from a placer deposit using a pan. The process is one of the simplest ways to extract gold, and is popular with geology enthusiasts, especially because of its low cost and relative simplicity. The first recorded instances of placer mining are from ancient Rome, where gold and other precious metals were extracted from streams and mountainsides using sluices and penning. However, the productivity rate is comparatively smaller compared to other methods, such as the rocker box, or large extractors, such as those used at the Super Pit gold mine in Kalgoorlie, Western Australia, which has led to panning being largely replaced in the modern commercial market. Gold panning is a simple process. Once a suitable place to deposit is located, some alluvial deposits are scooped into a pan, where they are then wetted and loosened from attached soils by soaking, fingering, and aggressive agitation in water. This is called stratification, which helps dense materials like gold sink to the bottom of the pan. Materials with low specific gravity will rise upwards, allowing these to be washed out of the pan, whereas materials with higher specific gravity, sinking to the bottom of the sediment during stratification, will remain in the pan, allowing examination and collection by the prospector. These dense materials usually consist of black sand with whatever stones or dense metal particles that may be found in the deposit that is used for source material. While an effective method of certain kinds of deposits and essential for prospecting, even skilled panners can only work a limited amount of material, significantly less than the other methods which have replaced it in large operation. Pans remain in use in places where there is limited capital or infrastructure, as well as in recreational gold mining. In many situations, gold panning usually turns up only minor gold dust that is usually collected as a sovereign in small clear tubes by hobbyists. Nuggets and considerable amounts of dust are occasionally found, but panning mining is not generally lucrative nowadays. Panning for gold can be used to locate the parent gold veins, which are the source of most placer deposits. Gold pans of various designs have been developed over the years, the common features being a means for trapping the heavy materials during agitation, or for easily removing them at the end of the process. Some pans are intended for use with mercury, including screens, sharp corners for breaking ice, or none round, or even designed for use with or without water. Edward Otho Sresa Ord II, a former army officer and co-owner of several mines, patented several pan designs, including designs for use with mercury or dry. Pans are measured by their diameter in inches or centimeters. Common sizes of gold pans today range between 10 to 17 inches, with 14 inches being the most used size. The sides are generally angled between 30 degrees to 45 degrees. Pans are manufactured in both metal and high-impact plastic nowadays. Russia iron or heavy gauge steel pans are traditional. Steel pans are heavier and stronger than plastic pans. Some are made of lightweight alloys for structural stability. Plastic gold pans resist dust, acid, and corrosion, and most are designed with molded riffles along one side of the pan. Of the plastic gold pans, green and red ones are usually preferred among prospectors, as both the gold and the black sand stands out in the bottom of the pan, although many also opt for black pans instead to easily identify gold deposit. The batea, Spanish for gold pan, is a particular variant of gold pan. Traditionally made of a solid piece of wood, it may also be made of metal nowadays. Bateas are used in areas where there is less water available for use than with traditional gold pans, such as Mexico and South America, where it was introduced by the Spanish. Bateas are larger than other gold pans, being closer to half a meter, 20 inches in diameter. Uriita. The uriita, Japanese for rocking plate, is a traditional wooden gold pan used in Japan. Unlike other gold pans, it is rectangular in shape, with a concave cross-section, and is sealed off at one end with the other end open. As the Japanese name implies, the gold is panned with a rocking motion. Placer mining is the mining of a stream bed, also known as alluvial, deposits for minerals. Alluvium is loose clay, silt, sand or gravel that has been deposited by running water in a stream bed, on a floodplain, in an alluvial fan or beach, or in a similar setting. Alluvium is also sometimes called alluvial deposit. Alluvium is typically geologically young and is not consolidated into solid rock. Placer mining is the mining of a stream bed or alluvial deposits for minerals. This may be done by open pit, also called open cast mining, or by various surface excavation equipment or tunneling equipment. Placer mining is frequently used for precious metal deposits, including gold and gemstones, both of which are often found in alluvial deposits of sand and gravel in modern or ancient stream beds, or occasionally glacial deposits. The metal or gemstones, having been moved by stream flow from an original source such as a vein, are typically only a minuscule portion of the total deposit. Since gems and heavy metals like gold are considerably denser than sand, they tend to accumulate at the base of placer deposits. Placer deposits can be as young as a few years old, such as the Canadian Queen Charlotte Beach gold placer deposits, or billions of years old, like the Elliott Lake uranium paleoplacer within the Huronian supergroup in Canada. The containing material in an alluvial placer mine may be too loose to safely mine by tunneling, though it is possible where the ground is permanently frozen. Where water under pressure is available, it may be used to mine, move and separate the precious material from the deposit, a method known as hydraulic mining, hydraulic sluicing, or hydraulicking. And here we see a painting of a 19th century miner pouring water into a rocker box, which, when rocked back and forth, will help separate gold dust from the alluvium. Etymology. The word placer derives from the Spanish placer, meaning shoal or alluvial sand deposit, from plaza, from medieval Latin placea, the original word for place and plaza in English. The word in Spanish is thus derived from placea and refers directly to an alluvial or glacial deposit of sand or gravel. An alternative etymology derives the English word from American Spanish placer, sandbank, from earlier placel, apparently from obsolete Portuguese placel, sandbank. History. Placers supplied most of the gold for a large part of the ancient world. Hydraulic mining methods, such as hushing, were used widely by the Romans across their empire, but especially in the goldfields of northern Spain after its conquest by Augustus in 25 BC. And hushing is an ancient and historic mining method using a flood or torrent of water to reveal mineral veins. The method was applied in several ways, both in prospecting for ores and for their exploitation, and we'll read about that a bit later on. One of the largest sites in ancient Rome was at Las Medullas, where 7 30-mile-long aqueducts were used to work the alluvial gold deposits through the 1st century AD. In North America, placer mining was famous in the context of several gold rushes, particularly the California Gold Rush, and the Colorado Gold Rush, and the Fraser Canyon Gold Rush, and the Klondike Gold Rush. Placer mining continues in many areas of the world as a source of diamonds, industrial minerals and metals, gems in Myanmar and Sri Lanka, platinum, and of gold in Yukon, Alaska, and British Columbia. And here's a photo of a placer mine in Alma, Colorado in 1880. An area well protected from the flow of water is a great location to find gold. Gold is very dense and is often found in a riverbed. Many different gold deposits are dealt with in different ways. Placer deposits attract many prospectors because the costs are very low. There are many different gold places could be placed, such as residual, alluvial, and a bench deposit. Residual deposits are more common where there has been weathering on rocks and where there hasn't been water. They are deposits which have not been washed away yet or been moved. The residual usually lies at the site of the lode. This type of deposit undergoes rock weathering. Alluvial or alluvial deposits are the most common type of placer gold and are often the richest. They contain pieces of gold that have been washed away from the lode by the force of water and have been deposited in sediment in or near watercourses or former watercourses. Therefore, they are mostly found in valleys or floodplains. Bench deposits are created when gold reaches a stream bed. Gold accumulations in an old stream bed that are high are called bench deposits. They can be found in higher slopes that drain into valleys. Dry stream beds, benches, can be situated far from other water sources and can sometimes even be found on mountain tops. Today, many miners focus their activities on bench deposits. Deep leads are created when a former stream is covered over by later sediments or by igneous rocks from a volcanic eruption. Examples existed in the goldfields of Wollongong and Creswick in Australia. The gold-bearing gravel is accessed by shafts and drives similar to underground mining techniques, but is processed as alluvial gold. A number of methods are used to mine placer gold and gems, both in terms of extracting the minerals from the ground and separating it from the non-gold or non-gems. Panning is the simplest technique to extract gold from placer ore. This technique has been dated back to at least the Roman Empire. In panning, some mined ore is placed in a large metal or plastic pan, combined with a generous amount of water, and agitated so that the gold particles, being of higher density than other material, settle to the bottom of the pan. The lighter gangue materials such as sand, mud, and gravel are then washed over the side of the pan, leaving the gold behind. Once a placer deposit is located by gold panning, the miner usually shifts to equipment that can treat volumes of sand and gravel more quickly and efficiently. Gold panning was commonly used on its own during the California gold rush. However, it is nowadays rarely used for profit, since even an expert gold prospector can only process approximately 1 cubic yard of material for every 10 hours of work. Rocker box. A rocker box or cradle is capable of greater volume than a gold pan. However, its production is still limited when compared to other methods of placer mining. It is only capable of processing about 3 to 4 yards of gravel a day. It is more portable and requires less infrastructure than a sluice box, being fed not by a sluice but by hand. A rocker box or cradle is capable of greater volume than a gold pan. However, its production is still limited when compared to other modern methods of placer mining. It is only capable of processing about 3 to 4 yards of gravel a day. It is more portable and requires less infrastructure than a sluice box, being fed not by a sluice but by hand. The box sits on rockers, which when rocked, separates out the gold, and the practice was referred to as rocking the golden baby. A typical rocker box is approximately 42 inches long, 16 inches wide, and 12 inches deep, with a removable tray towards the top where gold is placed. The rocker was commonly used throughout North America during the early gold rush, but its popularity diminished as other methods that could handle a larger volume became more common. The sluice box. The same principle may be employed on a larger scale by constructing a short sluice box with barriers along the bottom called riffles to trap the heavier gold particles as water washes them and other materials along the box. This method better suits excavation with shovels or similar implements to feed ore into the device. Sluice boxes can be as short as a few feet or more than 10 feet. A common term for one that is over 6 feet plus is a long tom. While they are capable of handling a larger volume of material than simpler methods, such as the rocker box or gold panning, this can come at the cost of efficiency, since conventional sluice boxes have been found to recover only about 40% of the gold that they process. The sluice box was used extensively during the California gold rush for larger scale operations. When streams became increasingly depleted, the grizzly and undercurrent variants of the sluice box were developed. The grizzly is a set of parallel bars placed at a 45-degree angle over the main sluice box, which filter out larger material. The undercurrent variety includes additional auxiliary sluice boxes when material is initially filtered. It then travels through a throw into a primary sluice box where it is filtered again. Both the grizzly and undercurrent are designed to increase efficiency and were often used in combination. Dry washing. Sluicing is only effective in areas where there is a sufficient water supply and is impractical in arid areas. Alternative methods developed that use the blowing of air to separate out gold from sand. One of the more common methods of dry washing is the Mexican dry wash. This method involves blowing air through the board in order to remove the lighter material from the heavier gold. This method involves placing gravel on a riffle board with a bellows placed underneath it. The bellows is then used to blow air through the board in order to remove the lighter material from the heavier gold. The amount of gravel that can be processed using the Mexican dry wash technique varies from 1.5 cubic yard to 4 cubic yards per day and can be processed at a maximum efficiency of 80%. Another form of dry washing is winnowing. This method was most commonly used by Spanish miners in America and only requires a blanket and a box with a screen on the bottom. The material is first filtered through the box, so only the finer material is placed onto the blanket. The material on the blanket is then flung into the air so that any breeze can blow away the lighter material and leave the gold behind. While this method is extremely simple and requires very few materials, it is also slow and inefficient. Trommel. A trommel is composed of a slightly inclining rotating metal tube, the scrubber section, with a screen at its discharge end. Lifter bars, sometimes in the form of bolted in iron angle, are attached to the interior of the scrubber section. The ore is fed into the elevated end of the trommel. Water, often under pressure, is provided to the scrubber in screen sections, and the combination of water and mechanical action frees the valuable minerals from the ore. The mineral-bearing ore that passes through the screen is then further concentrated in smaller devices, such as sluices and jigs. The larger pieces of ore that do not pass through the screen can be carried to a waste stack by a conveyor. Gold dredge. Large-scale sifting of placer gold from large volumes of alluvial deposits can be done by use of mechanical dredges nowadays. These dredges were originally very large boats, capable of processing massive amounts of material. However, as the gold has become increasingly depleted in the most easily accessible areas, smaller and more maneuverable dredges have become much more common. These smaller dredges commonly operate by sucking water and gravel up through the long hose using a pump, where the gold can be separated using more traditional methods such as a sluice box. Underground mining. In areas where the ground is permanently frozen, such as in Siberia, Alaska, and the Yukon, placer deposits may be mined underground. As the frozen ground is otherwise too hard and firm to mine by hand, historically fires were built so as to thaw the ground before digging it. Later, methods involve blasting jets of steam, points, into the frozen deposits. Deep leads are accessed by techniques similar to conventional underground mining.